It is a strange irony that we can be surrounded by friends, laughing at a joke, yet feel like we are observing the entire scene from behind a thick pane of glass. We know how to play the role, how to nod at the right time, and how to mirror the energy of the room. But behind our eyes there is a separate, silent engine that never stops turning. We are never truly fully there, because we are too busy deconstructing the reality we are supposed to be experiencing. It is the 4 p.m. ping from a manager. "See me for a minute," that sends a phantom wave of adrenaline through our chest, even when we know we have done nothing wrong. It is the way we replay a 5-second interaction from a morning meeting, dissecting the slight flicker in a colleague's gaze or the unnatural pause before they offered a compliment, searching for a hidden motive that might not even exist. When we are in a conversation, we are not just listening to words. We are tracking the cadence of a voice, the micro movements of a jaw, and the subtle shifting of weight, as if we are hunting for a signal in the noise. We go home physically exhausted, drained by the weight of 1,000 invisible conversations that never actually took place. We treat our own emotions like a laboratory specimen. When a wave of sadness hits, we don't just feel it. We immediately stop to analyze why we are sad, judge the validity of that sadness, and then feel guilty for feeling it in the first place. It is an endless feedback loop where our minds are both the performer and the harshest critic in the audience, leaving us feeling like a stranger in our own skin. For so long we have been told that this is just a personality quirk, or worse, a character flaw we need to toughen up against. But what if the very thing we've been trying to suppress is actually a hidden language our nervous system is trying to speak? In a world that celebrates the loudest voice and the most decisive action, there is a quiet, collective shame that follows us around. We live in a culture that treats sensitivity as an inconvenience and awareness as a distraction. When we find ourselves stuck in that analytical loop, scanning a room for safety or dissecting a conversation for hidden meanings, society doesn't see a complex mind at work. It sees someone who is too much. We hear the labels whispered, or more often, we project them onto ourselves: oversensitive, dramatic, high maintenance, weak. We are told to just let it go, or stop worrying so much, as if our awareness were a volume knob we could simply turn down with a flick of the wrist. Because of this, we learn the art of the mask. We spend an exhausting amount of our daily energy performing normalcy, forcing a smile when our nervous system is screaming, nodding along to small talk while our brains are busy mapping the hidden power dynamics of the room and pretending that we are just as carefree as everyone else. This is where the real weight begins to settle in. It isn't the environment itself that exhausts us. It is the constant, invisible labor of hiding our internal reality from the world. We begin to look at our own minds with suspicion. We start to wonder, why can't I just be like everyone else? Why does a simple email cause me such visceral tension when it's clearly nothing to anyone else? We start to view our sharp perception as a defect, a glitch in our personality that makes us ill-equipped for the real world. We judge ourselves for the very thing that is trying to keep us safe. We feel like we are constantly failing to keep up with the pace of life, while in reality, we are just operating on a different frequency. We blame our character, our willpower, or our upbringing, convinced that if we were just stronger or less complicated, we wouldn't be so tired. But what if this entire narrative of weakness is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of how we are constructed? What if the reason we can't just stop is because our minds aren't actually malfunctioning at all? We have been looking at our experience as a character flaw, but as we dive deeper into the architecture of our own biology, we might find that the very thing we've been trying to suppress is not a burden, but a survival legacy, one that has been whispering the truth about our design all along. But if this isn't a flaw in our character, what is the alternative? If we aren't just being difficult or failing to cope, then what is actually happening in the hidden machinery of our brain when we walk into a room and instantly feel the shift in air pressure? We have to ask, Is this sensitivity something that was truly wrong from the start, or is it a specific, highly refined adaptation? Why would our nervous system, an organ designed for survival, evolve to keep us in a state of constant, high-resolution processing, even when there is no physical danger in sight? Could it be that what we call over-awareness isn't a breakdown of our cognitive filters, but a biological response to an environment that once demanded absolute precision for our survival? We've spent so long trying to silence the alarm, but perhaps we've been asking the wrong questions all along. To find the answer, we have to stop looking at our personality and instead look at the architecture of our biology. What if the feeling of being on edge is actually our brain's way of executing a complex, ancient survival protocol, one that is currently running in the wrong context? To understand why our minds behave this way, we have to stop looking at them as broken and start seeing them as highly specialized survival machines. Imagine our brain is not a modern computer, but a vigilance radar from a prehistoric era, designed for a landscape where a single miscalculation could mean the difference between safety and catastrophe. For many of us, this radar was calibrated during our earliest years. If we grew up in an environment where the atmosphere shifted like the weather, where we had to listen for the specific, heavy thud of a door to know if a parent was angry, or the rhythm of car tires to predict a mood, our nervous system didn't just learn to observe, it learned to anticipate. Biologically, this constant scanning is governed by the amygdala, our brain's internal danger alarm. In most people, this alarm is dormant, waiting for a clear, external threat. But for us, that alarm has been fused into an always-on state. It is constantly processing data from our environment, looking for patterns that signal emotional instability or social rejection long before they actually happen. This is where the default mode network, DMN, comes into play. This is the brain system responsible for reflection and self-referential thinking, the internal monologue that runs when we aren't focused on a specific task. In a typical brain, the DMN drifts in and out of focus. But in our case, the DMN is hyperactive, fueled by the amygdala's constant search for danger. Instead of daydreaming, our brain uses this network to run endless simulations. What if they are upset? What if this conversation is actually a test? We aren't just thinking, we are stress testing reality to ensure we are never caught off guard. We also see this through the lens of interoception, the brain's ability to sense the body's internal state. Because our nervous system is so finely tuned, a simple spike in heart rate from a double-shot espresso isn't just energy to us. Our insular cortex flags it as an impending panic attack because it matches the data we've stored about danger. Our brain is so efficient at pattern recognition that it starts seeing shadows where there are none, simply because it's trying to protect us from a disaster that occurred long ago. When we view it this way, we realize that our over-awareness isn't a glitch, it is a biological legacy, a sophisticated, though admittedly exhausted, mechanism that is still trying to defend a version of us that no longer exists in the present. Understanding that this is a physical, observable mechanism in our nervous system changes everything about how we carry ourselves through the day. When we understand that our constant state of scanning is simply an ancient survival protocol running in a modern, safe environment, the shame begins to dissolve. We are not broken. We are merely carrying a high-precision instrument in a world that is often content with low-resolution observation. The exhaustion we feel is not a symptom of a weak character, but the heavy cost of maintaining a lighthouse in the middle of a calm, sunny sea. We can begin to view this hyper-awareness as a biological shield, one that was forged in the fire of our past to protect us from unpredictable shifts. When we find ourselves dissecting a conversation at 3 a.m. or feeling the weight of someone else's irritation, we don't need to force the volume down or label ourselves as too sensitive. Instead, we can simply acknowledge the mechanism. My internal radar is currently trying to alert me to a danger that no longer exists. This shift turns the narrative from one of self-blame to one of self-recognition. We aren't being dramatic or overthinking. We are simply witnessing our nervous system performing its primary duty, trying to keep us safe by predicting the future based on the maps of our past. When we give ourselves this permission, the intensity of that sealing light in our minds naturally begins to soften. We don't have to turn it off, because that awareness is a part of who we are. A depth of perception that allows us to feel, understand, and connect in ways others might miss. We can choose to use this radar not to hunt for danger, but to appreciate the subtle complexities of the human experience. We can move from a place of defensive survival into a place of quiet, grounded presence, knowing that we are safe enough to finally stop scanning. The mind that was once our prison can become the very source of our deepest wisdom as we learn to carry our sensitivity not as a burden, but as a lens through which we view a more nuanced, beautiful reality. Which specific moment in your daily life makes you realize that your internal radar is working a bit harder than everyone else's? And how does it feel now that you know it's just your brain's way of keeping you safe? If these explorations into our hidden design resonate with your own journey, feel free to join our conversation by subscribing, and let's keep uncovering what's happening beneath the surface together.